not about you liking the show. That actually doesn't matter. It's only about you not turning it off. It's like, how do we get it to be interesting enough that you turn it on and then you don't turn it off? And that is the perfect amount of money that they want to spend to make a show.
Hello and welcome to another Dead Pixel, where a podcast about video games, anime, entertainment, life, a little bit of everything in between. I'm your host as always, Joe, and with me is the gentleman who always runs screaming into a fire, Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Doing pretty good. Um, how are you?
Doing all right, man.
Okay.
One thing I have to recommend to you is to always cover your mouth, with cloth or something, and a little less smoke inhalation will do you good.
Yeah, I mean, but you don't really get
The smoke high,
yeah, the smoke high,
burning in the lungs.
like when you can't breathe and you're running as fast as you can up 15 flights of stairs. You really start to hallucinate. So you just go to a different place, and I don't want anything to impede my creative process. Whenever I'm doing that. So I'm not gonna, I know all the kids are using cloths to cover their mouths when they run, but you know, like we used to do it in the old days. Just not gonna do that. But anyway, I wanted to
The
ask
plot
you.
twist is it's just you with a fire blanket over you over a fondue set, just screaming at the fondue instead of actually a real fire. Just trying to get that.
My own
Oh, kitchen fire.
my own like hot room or whatever, steam room,
Hot box.
hot box. Yeah. Remember this?
All right. Off to a good start.
There was this so when I was a kid I went to daycare, and and in the summertime, so we were there like all day, but they would take us like bowling or something. And there were these vans that we had to ride in, and these vans were they were the really old kind, even for the time. They were made of this big heavy steel, and they had like, some were like that really hard leather seats, but other ones had like carpeted seats. And like we'd have to ride in these in July or whatever. And my friend at the time, he'd be like, "Can we just not go?" Like he'd be begging the teachers, like, "Can we just not go? Like I don't want to get in the metal box again." Because I mean, it'd be like 105 degrees outside when we went, and the air conditioning, I mean, it doesn't matter how good the air conditioning is in an old van like that. You're just like broiling alive. So that's a fond memory that you brought up.
All right. Glad you survived it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Uh, all right. Well, we usually talk about video games, and Nick, you have some news for us, right? So
yeah.
why don't you lead us off?
I have a lot of we have a lot of whatever news. So that I haven't really followed up on or read very much about. So we'll see how it goes. I'll start with Starfield. Looks like it's coming to PS5 per a logo that was leaked somewhere. Saw this on IGN. So if you only have a PS5 and you wanted to play Starfield, well, it looks like you're gonna get your chance to pay $70 or whatever to play Starfield on PlayStation. So yeah, that's happening. Not that surprising to me, I guess, but also kind of weird. I mean, Forza's coming, so
I mean, they're slowly going to bring everything over. Bethesda needs to recoup more losses. It wasn't the best selling game, so that makes sense.
Really, was it not that good of a selling game? I thought it was
Uh,
huge.
some people blame it didn't have the as long of life as people are more interested in talking about Fallout 4 at this point still.
Oh wow.
I mean,
All right.
yeah, so it's one of those things that it also didn't like help with sales because it was already on Game Pass day and day, right? So people
Oh.
got the taste, jumped out, didn't get to really step back in. They've done in a DLC since, and a lot of people haven't really touched base, including myself. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
I
since
mean
you
that
spent.
DLC was supposed to be more horror based, right? So
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Ever since you spent 30 hours in the first 2 hours of the game, Is
Yep,
that how
yep.
you put it?
That's roughly about right. I mean, I honestly think I leveled up real far before even completing the first one of the first major like bases you're supposed to tutorial through. So they're like the first you gave me a chance to go left. I went left. Yeah, why should I go straight?
And just
Um,
yeah, just yeah, that can kind of burn you out on a game. But okay, I just didn't really think about it not selling that well, but yeah, I think it does make sense sort of with all of the Game Pass stuff. Um and all that's going on. I wonder what their plan is for the future. Maybe games like that'll live way longer because way longer, and they'll end up recouping their money spent on making them, over the course of 10 years rather than the first year like they like to. I don't know.
yeah, I'm not sure. I think they're just going to be moving on to a new property. I mean, I don't think it's in the news docket, but they've already talked about like there's rumors going about the new remake of Oblivion coming out. Uh, in theory, it's supposed to be in Unreal 5, but you can't do everything that you could with the old engine in Unreal 5, so it might just be like a wrapper, like it's one of those weird things. I have a love hate relationship with Oblivion because that was the first one I really gave a good effort in, and
Okay.
like a lot of my friends were into had the original Xbox. They played Morrowind. Um, None of us really had computers that we weren't gaming on computers at the time, and so when Oblivion came out, I gave that a shot. Uh, Patrick Stewart was in it. It was great for a
For like
whole
5 minutes, right?
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, that's a waste of a big talent, but that's the way it goes. And then as I play those like my old school RPG self, trying to grind, they had the world level system in that one. So as you level up, so do the enemies. Um, Problem is when you get to a certain point, if you have to do escort missions, some of those escort NPCs don't level up, and therefore it becomes a nightmare, or you end up locking yourself out
Oh
because
wow.
you can't protect them enough because all the enemies are able to darn near one hit them. Yeah, it's. I hope they change that. If they make that into a more traditional format, but I don't even know if they can. So we'll see. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, hopefully, I know. Hopefully, Starfield picks up a new set of legs on PlayStation. I enjoyed it for what it was. I preferred it actually better than uh, the handful of the more recent stuff they've come out with. So I just, once again, I don't have the time to dump back into that, and I also just wasn't as keen on building my own ship. Like, if you really wanted to do that, like, and you're really into that stuff, that's awesome, and they gave you all the tools for it. I That was a whole aspect that I could have just done without.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure plenty of PS5 people will learn to enjoy it. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of stars and fields, uh, apparently Sony is officially rebooting Starship Troopers. This is an article I wish I'd been able to read a little bit more about. But there's like has something to do with the Helldivers movie that they're making and stuff. So stands to reason that they're getting into the Starship Troopers business as well, because that's kind of what they're joking about in Helldivers. So yeah, that kind of has me interested. I would take another Starship Troopers movie. I as long as it's tongue in cheek, um, or a series or whatever that's like weirdly tongue in cheek, that would be kind of cool. So just kind of imagining what that would be like sort of piqued my interest.
Yeah, I'm curious who they have to direct it, right? Because that's
Oh
going to
yeah,
be kind of key. Um, I mean, if you, I don't know, Paul was it Verhoeven? Like that's like one of the greatest things that they've done. They've done a lot of great things when it comes to doing tongue in cheek, making fun of the established, government and or society.
man,
RoboCop, it's
so
just like
funny. Some of the stuff in those
so.
they're it's played so straight, but it's so freaking hilarious.
And that's the fear is they try to play it hammy and then they lose it because of it, right? So
Right.
I mean, they'll probably try to do too many nods to the original, being like, hey, we got the joke, right? Here's the meme, here's the thing. So hopefully they don't do too much of that. But yeah, I really do like the original Starship Troopers. Though, to be honest, if they made it like the source material and stuff like that, that would actually kind of be cool too, because
Mm,
the old novel and like a lot of the animated works, um, kind of go to like have that vibe to it more, like the like, suits, because that was like one of the first pieces of literature, if I can remember, that has something similar to an exosuit, like a power armor kind of deal.
yeah.
So I mean, there's room for other things, and therefore they could both exist and be just separate instead of one trying to ham off the other and not do a good job. I'd almost want it to be just a completely different take. It might irk a lot of people. You can have some of the trimmings, but like if you make it a super serious or super like just kind of go full sci-fi, that would kind of be its own thing. I don't know. There's just a different idea to it.
Yeah,
All right,
that's true.
what else you got for us?
Next up, I didn't get the chance to see this because it got pulled down too fast. But uh, the do you remember the Batgirl movie that they made in its entirety and then did not release? They canceled it because it was big people didn't like it so much, or it was I don't know if I guess executives got a hold of it and was like, oh, this is awful.
Yeah, it was WB just imploding upon itself and just like throwing away money is what they were doing. Yeah, they
I mean,
canned
it's
a
like,
lot of
how
stuff.
bad does it have to be? I mean, I know it's old news, but I just, that thought loop just kind of wheels its way around in my mind. It's like, how bad does a movie have to be that the company is like, this, releasing this will do more damage than the money that it could make to break even? It's just, that's how
Well,
bad it
I
is.
heard by scrubbing it, they get a better tax write-off, is what how it worked. I thought.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So by canning the whole thing, because they didn't have a chance to recoup any costs, they can just scrub like the majority of the budget as a tax write-off.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
I mean, that's just what I heard. That was the
I
stuff
mean,
I heard
it would
about it.
have to
But
be something like
whether it's
that,
true or
right?
not,
I mean,
yeah.
because it's like you hire people, I mean, you put your best foot forward to make a movie like that, and everybody in it wants it to succeed and stuff like that. And you have people who are very competent at what they're doing. You know, it's not their first rodeo, so it does stand to reason that it really wouldn't be that much of a fiasco as it is just a benefit monetarily tax wise to make it do. Anyway, there's a fight scene from that movie, an unfinished fight scene, I think they said, from that movie that leaked online, but it got pulled down pretty quickly. So I'm sure it's floating around somewhere on the internet. Maybe I'll get a chance to peruse around and try to find it at some point. But I just thought that was kind of interesting and brought that whole saga back into the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the other thing is now that I'm remembering it, chances are by the time they were releasing it, they were already killing this current run of the DC universe.
Okay.
So it wouldn't have really made like that's what they already announced that they're kind of phasing it out by the time was it I think there was a second Shazam movie and it was the Blue Beetle came out. They already kind of announced that like, hey, we're kind of running this series finished and we're
Mm.
gonna do the whole new series. So they kind of like, why should we watch this movie of this person who doesn't need not going to matter after this point? So I guess that that could be another reason why they did it too. But yeah, all right. Chances are I'll probably end up having to watch someone else's version reaction video to it because they'll probably have it on a small screen next to it, and then I can at least see it that way. So
Yeah, that's probably the best way that's gonna be. It's gonna be to see that. Um, yeah. And the last piece of news here is sort of twofold. Um, so I was late to get on to prep for the podcast today because I was in the middle of trying to finish up the final episode, episode 10 of season 2 of Severance. And so I just finished that, and I will not be talking about it today. I'll wait at least a little while, and then if Joe, if you ever finish it, then I'll probably talk about it then, or maybe before that or something, if whatever. But anyway, so that had just ended, but I guess simultaneously, Apple announced that they have renewed it for season 3. So that's kind of a spoiler, I guess, in some ways. But I guess everybody kind of knew that it wasn't going to end um, with season 2. But anyway, that removes all doubt. So that's kind of the first piece, and then the other thing that I saw is that this is also from IGN that Apple is losing $1 billion per year on streaming. Um, and I think I have a theory about that. I think that might be that might be sort of a magic number that somebody pulled out to make it to be a good clickable headline. So it worked on me.
That sounds super hyperbolic right there. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but I also have a theory. I think it might work. So, have I told you my theory on restaurants or on starting a new restaurant?
no, you haven't.
Okay, so my theory with starting a restaurant, because everybody knows that restaurants notoriously fail, really easily. It's extremely hard to get a new restaurant to actually work out. And my theory behind successful restaurants is this: when you start a restaurant, you need to have enough money. So take out a loan or whatever, but you need to have enough money to run it at a loss, like a deep red loss for the first year at least, and probably the first 2 years. And then only in that third year start making money. Um, and, and as long as, I mean, between, so basically you need to have like a 3 to 5 year plan for a restaurant. Um, because, and the reason I think this is because when you start a restaurant, nobody knows who you are or whether or not your food is going to be good. So it's really hard to get people to, one, come in the first place, and two, to come back, even if it's pretty all right. So with a restaurant, I think that you have to buy really good quality ingredients, pay employees way more than they're probably worth so that you can get the very best. And you have to sell all that food at a really, really good price. And that way, anybody that comes into your restaurant is going to be like, okay, let me just give this new place a try. They try your food and they go, wow, this is like really, really, really delicious food. Service was amazing. And it's so freaking cheap. Holy crap. And they tell everybody they know. They come back like all the time or whatever. And then in that second or third year, depending on how things go, in that, at least let's say that second year, that's when you start to like raise prices like a little bit. And so it's like, okay, this is, so people who are used to coming in your restaurant, they're like, well, it's still really good. I don't care if it's like $1 more or whatever. And then you just slowly kind of raise your prices more and more until you have like, you have enough money and you're just sort of like, you're basically like every other restaurant now. You're not really, you're not really special. You're not really doing anything way better or way worse, but your clientele like trusts you, and now you just survive as a normal restaurant and a chain or whatever. I think that might be behind Apple's like losing money, like $1 billion a year. Because I mean, Apple TV Plus is still, it's not that old. I mean, I remember when they were charging like $6 or whatever a month for it. So, and now they're like, now they're at like a $10 for a month. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe they're like, okay, we're gonna lose a bunch of money for a while, but we're gonna build up a good library, and then slowly start to raise the price, continuously until we're at like 15 or 20 or whatever Hulu and
Well,
Netflix are.
didn't you say the whole $1 billion thing was supposed to be due to fraudulent streaming?
Oh no, I didn't say that part. Is that what it's about?
Okay. Well, I thought that's what you said.
Oh
I
no,
blanked out then.
the
Okay.
the uh, the article that I am looking at specifically is titled "Apple TV Plus reportedly losing $1 billion a year despite
All right.
streaming hits such as
Just
Severance and Silo."
okay. Just streaming. Okay. For some reason I was
Yeah.
thinking they were trying to blame it on fraudulent streaming. I'm like, I don't know how the stream sharing works for them, so I couldn't actually say for sure. Um all right. Well, it's one of those things that like that isn't that like the joke recently with Netflix as well. You know, them trying to make more movies and then them coming out with Electric State and everyone being like Electric State cost them 320 like $1 million, so they can recoup the losses by just upping the Netflix price, you know, again. Uh
Yeah, I haven't heard too much about Electric State. I put it on my to watch list because I was like, well, this looks kind of sci-fi and whatever. So I'll probably watch it. But I have heard somebody was trying to defend the use of AI in it. Apparently, that's something I saw. I have no opinion on it yet, but yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. You know, it's like anything else. You kind of you get people in the door on a good deal or whatever, and then they stick around, or at least enough of them stick around to pay full price for your other stuff. So anyway,
yeah. All right. Well, I mean, hopefully if the quality increases, you know, it justifies the price, but
I mean, like,
you can tell me about.
go ahead.
I said you can tell me how Apple does that because I'm never gonna really subscribe to them.
No, I
So
wouldn't. I wouldn't think that you would, but like, I mean, like what they do have. Um, I mean, I haven't sat there and watched every show they have on there, but everything that's piqued my interest enough to watch, um, like it's even if I'm like this is not for me, I don't feel like it's crap. You know, I'm like, okay, not for me, but it looks good. It looks like if I was into whatever this is about, underwater basket weaving or whatever, that I would really like this. But I just don't happen to be into this specific topic, so I'll move on. Whereas there's plenty of Netflix stuff where it's like, and I'm just kind of using Netflix as a punching bag, but plenty of Netflix stuff where it's like, this is a topic that I find really interesting. Click, watch. Oh my gosh, this is so horrible that I don't even like want to watch. It's so just mundane and boring. I don't even want to watch this thing that I would actually be interested in if it was like kind of like well done. So yeah, it's just different strategies. I'm sure Apple will get big enough to where they're like Netflix, where they're just like they have their 2 or 3 flagship shows that come out once every 3 or 4 or 5 years. Stranger Things, and then everything else is just fine, you know. But anyway,
all right. Well, you know, speaking about you know, this kind of topic and trying to get into, you know, the streaming services. For me, what I've been watching or what I've been debating on watching is I'm debating introducing my kid to RoboCop. Okay, so I've already talked about how I've got him into a bunch of other stuff, right? Well, you got to
oh,
realize,
Father of the
um,
Year, I can feel the.
we just talked about Paul Verhoeven. I mean, it's like, yeah. Well, I started watching RoboCop when I was 5. Um, which
So
explains a
your
lot.
son
While
at
other people
4.
were watching Back to the Future 2, um, I was just like, you know, here I am watching this. And granted, it was funny because I during that time, they were very much marketing RoboCop as a kids, you know, or as a normal family property. They came out with action figures. I had the RoboCop figure that had the trigger, the hammer in the back of, you know, and you put a roll of those little flat caps. So you know, it literally was just a roll of paper with little tiny little powder caps on them. And so every time you could just pull the hammer back, and when he fires, a little smoke comes from it. It makes a lot of bang. That's what they sold. They also had him with his motorcycle, which was not in the movie, but like they eventually made a kids cartoon show of it too. The motorcycle, if I remember correctly, had like a machine gun mounted to the front, so as the wheels moved, the gun would go back and forth.
Oh
And I'm like,
yeah.
all right, my kid's not quite the same age I was, so I'm like, maybe I'll just hold off on a little bit. And then it wasn't until like I remember I watched it a bunch. Apparently, then I saw it again in high school. I hadn't seen it for like all of most of my elementary school, middle school. Then I saw it again in high school. I'm like, I looked at my father. I'm like, wait a minute, you let me watch it? He's like, I had you turn your head at a couple parts.
I well,
So
yeah. I mean, the scene where he becomes he gets shot up is pretty. I mean, it's not just that it's violent; it's that it's like sadistic. Um, that would be. I think the rest of the movie is more or
between that,
less
there's a
not as
little
bad.
cutting open the surgery itself, the surgery, or
Okay,
um,
yeah.
getting turned to mush at the end. But it was, once again, I saw this in high school, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's Red Foreman from that '70s show. He's the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, that was wild.
I think that the movie holds up well enough that you wouldn't have to show it to him at a young age for him to appreciate it. So that's
The
all that I would say
the other
about
the
that.
other thought the other thought I was like, well, maybe I should just go to that RoboCop remake, the one that they forced it to be PG-13.
Oh yeah,
And I'm like, that's not going to be as good, but it's still RoboCop, so he might still enjoy it. So that's just like I'm like, or I was like, I should just go if I'm gonna go with old action movies. I'm like anything Chuck Norris related. Those almost have no blood in them, and those are almost like the most campy action, or like he grabs the Uzi, sprays left and right, everyone just goes they fall down. So I'm like, yeah, that shouldn't be bad.
yeah. I
It's not
think
like I'm having watched like The Departed or something.
yeah, I think
So
simpler action is probably a better place for him to start. Those things that are more complicated and darker, they hold up. So I think that when he gets older, wait till he's like, wait till he can, wait till like really scar him, like 7 or 8. Shelter him until then, and then you'll really be able to, win Father of the
yeah,
Year
well,
award.
those streaming services are really good for showing the old monster films. That's all I gotta say. Like
That's
those
true,
old
man.
kaiju films, he's enjoying the crud out of those. So yeah, for sure. I haven't found a new show on any of the streaming services that I would have really been like, man, I'm really glad this this exists. I've just everything's just been like okay.
Yeah, yeah, that is sort of that's sort of what I think they figured out, like the sweet spot where that it's not about you liking the show. That actually doesn't matter. It's only about you not turning it off. It's like, how do we get it to be interesting enough that you turn it on and that you don't turn it off? And that is the perfect amount of money that they want to spend to make a show. But I'm kind of black pilled on the whole thing, so maybe maybe I'm not the best person to.
Yeah,
Talk about
for sure. All right, well, let's see. Lately, I've been playing a PSVR 2 game called Trombone Champ. It's a music rhythm game in which, yeah, it's just like it sounds. You play the trombone. It's a super silly, uh, stupid little game, which is entertaining enough. You can upgrade your trombones. You get them. You can buy one with a cat just resting on top of it. You can paint your trombones and then spray paint the cat as well. You get one that's like an engine, just like a car engine on top of the trombone. So every time you so if you're playing with either the cat or the engine, you for example, they make special sound effects instead of a normal trombone noise, which is their default is like a cartoony high pitch trombone. But like you get the cat and it starts making a more of a meowing purring noise as you're playing. Super annoying. But
Okay.
it's all about being ridiculous as possible, and it's just like I'm like, you know what? It's brought to you by Flat to VR. It's that new studio that came out a little while ago. They announced a handful of games, and just recently they announced that they're doing like Postal 2. And I'm like, of all the games to bring to VR, why Postal 2? I mean,
Everyone's
it's
clamoring
not even
for it.
I wouldn't even say it's a cult classic. It's like it's not like a Duke Nukem 3D or something like that. It's Postal 2. I don't know. But anyways, I think they're bringing like Flat Out or something like that. They're bringing like one of those old car crashing kind of games, and I'm like, that would be interesting to bring into VR. That'd be silly and fun. But I picked it up on sale, the last recent sale, last time it dropped, and I'm like, you know what? This is should be entertaining enough for the family. But I gave it a shot, and it's not bad as far as a music rhythm game. It plays a lot of just uh, simple simple songs. Uh, they have it's kind of odd to play it with like you have a choice of having a single line of music on one side, or you can have it alternate from back and forth. So therefore, if you really want to, you can then start bobbing your head back. But I'm just gonna keep it on one side. They have a couple of quality of life features where you don't have to consistently have it perfectly up to your face. It'll like lock on, as it were, so you can kind of lower your arms a little bit.
Okay.
Um, it'll auto lock on your left hand grab, or whatever hand you choose to have as your dominant hand. You can have it so set it to lock, so you just have to click it once. You'll pick it up, and you don't have to keep on holding or squeezing the button. Then the playing hand, the extending hand, you can then also have that lock on. At first, it wasn't an option that was available, so I was constantly having to squeeze the trigger, and that was getting slightly fatiguing. And with that, you're also still using, in order to play the notes, you can either have to hit one of the face buttons with your thumb, or you can pull the trigger button. And while holding the slide for the trombone, it gets very tiring. And then I look through the options. Sure enough, you can just toggle to hold the slide, and then you just have to either hit the face buttons or pull the trigger, which helps out a bit. uh, but it does, there's still something about it. I think it's maybe because I have the globular cluster
Oh,
pads. It kind of limits the movement of my hand, so I'm kind of fighting the pad while trying to uh, play those notes. So I
okay.
think it's making my hand more fatigued. So I'm going to try to play it without it to see how much better that feels. If it loosens up my grip a little bit and lets me maybe angle it a little different to play more comfortably. But it's surprising how quickly and intuitively like you play the notes, because kind of like a, a Guitar Hero Rock Band kind of thing. You see the notes on a slide scale coming at you, uh, and as you extend all the way forward, you know you'll see the notes drop at rise and fall. And so you just kind of, as it's going, you kind of match it to where you need to, and then you could just either hit the face button or pull the trigger to breathe, as it were. And yeah, I don't think it's very long. I mean, I feel like I've only played it for a handful of hours, and I feel like I'm pretty far into it. They have just a bunch of small songs. You unlock challenges, to try to hit like the high max streak you can get for like X amount of seconds, or try to hit an S rank. And so as you're doing these challenges, you can then unlock more songs, uh, and you get kind of a little bit of variety there. It's a fun, quirky little music game. That's all there is to it. I mean, it's it's one of those things that if you wanted something different other than Beat Saber, Synth Rider, or something. And there's a couple drum games, that are for the, but outside of that, there's not a lot. I think there's also like an air guitar game, now that I think about it, on PSVR 2. So I'm like, there's not a, like, I'm okay with any type of new uh music type of game. I honestly think with PSVR 2, they should bring Samba de Amigo, which is more or less locked with Nintendo at this point, I think.
Mhm.
But I think that would be great because you have the maracas, and I think that'd be
That's pretty
hilarious.
perfect. Yeah.
um or something, something along those lines. I think that might be entertaining. But anyways, Trombone Champ, they have a bunch of little small collectibles, a bunch of new trombones to unlock, and it's all just goofy silliness. And so, you're uh, if you're interested in any of that, they might, I don't know if they have a demo, but I highly recommend just taking a look at the video. And if you like music rhythm games and you want to try just something different and kind of goofy, this is fun enough. So pick it up on sale though.
I mean, that's good.
That's
It is.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is a cool idea. I do think that VR stuff has a lot of potential to make rhythm games and music games and stuff like that kind of have a resurgence because you wouldn't have to buy quite so much gear. I mean, it's like you could sell a peripheral that was like drumsticks or whatever, and an actual drum or whatever. but you can also make it's like, yeah, you can just hold the controllers you already have, and it works and it feels good or whatever. Especially if you can start to get haptic feedback and vibration in those controllers at some point. Um, th- then then it's like anybody who wants to try it and enjoy it a little bit can jump in and go, okay, that's cool. But anybody who's like, whoa, this says who goes like really far into it and tries to platinum it or whatever and plays on super hard mode, or is an actual drummer, but wants sort of a game to go along with that instead of real just drumming work. Um, then yeah, I just feel like any kind of instrument or whatever, you could use VR to have fun doing it, and then also like you could also maybe have like a Duolingo type of game for instruments and stuff where I mean maybe it starts out as a game but you can keep leveling up until it's like, okay, this is how you actually read music and this is how you, and it's just like all in VR, so you're like at the music studio or whatever. I don't know. It's the idea of it just makes me think of a lot of cool things that and ways that it could go.
Yeah, the main drum game is for PSVR2 is Drums Rock, and they do a pretty good job with haptic feedback and just the feel of it. It's still took like I did the demo and it took me a little bit to get used to, and I'm like, yeah, I can see the fun in it, but I there's something about it that I think I just tactile wise, I just want a real drum. I'd rather play like the old Rock Band in the sense, but because they don't make those anymore, uh, all the old drum sets for like the 360 even are still like $100 at minimum. It's kind of crazy how expensive those go for. And there's another drumming game that's Ragnarok, uh, and ROCK. So that one is
Oh, okay,
you're
I get it.
you're you're guiding the Viking ships by banging on the drums to make everyone row. And so as you're playing the rhythm, the better and more perfect the beats are, the faster your crew is rowing to get to the afterlife, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So different stages have and different songs have different levels as you're rowing through. So you can have um, like a Niflheim level or something like that, or you can have like the more traditional like Hellscape. It's kind of funny. It's that and those drums are actually mallets. So and you can adjust the angle of the mallet. So it's essentially, yeah, depending on how comfortable you feel or how if you're playing seated or standing,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of really customize that one to your feel. Uh, yeah, and then one last thing real quick is there is a sale for almost all the DLC for Synth Rider. It's like almost all of it's 50% off. So
Oh wow,
yeah,
there's quite
and
a
they
bit
just
of
like they
DLC,
have,
right?
yeah, it is. I bought it all almost normally. Uh, I only have like 3 DLCs that I haven't picked up. And they just came out with a fourth one. The fourth one is the one that's not on sale now. It's like I forget, it's a new variety pack, but the one of the newest ones, which is like 80s mixtape side B, that's actually on sale, which is nice. Side A and side B just came out within a handful of months, and then there's yeah, so I recommend if you if people are out there, totally, now's the time to pick up some of that DLC because it's rarely goes on sale for, and especially not for this much. Um, so yeah, all right. Well, how about yourself? What have you been playing?
So there's this game that I saw a little preview for a while ago. That looked the art style kind of looked interesting to me, and a little bit of the gameplay. I was like, okay, I wonder what this is kind of going to be like. Uh, it's called Antro, and it is a sort of near future dystopian sort of, I wouldn't say cyberpunk, but getting like sort of a little closer to that. But it's near future dystopian, um, and I think it takes place in a fictional South American or Central American country. I can't really remember off the top of my head. It might actually be in a real country, but but I don't remember exactly right now. But so it does have like a Spanish aesthetic, though. I can say that much. Um, so anyway, so this game's not out yet, but they did have a demo that came out. Um, So I decided to try that, and I think it's about 3 levels that are in the demo. Um, this game has some pretty a couple pretty interesting ideas. Um, it starts out with a little bit of free walking, but you are on a 2D plane, or at least you can only walk backward and forward from left to right. Well, but it does have like 3D behind it, um, so I was like, okay. So I walk out of my apartment, and then it gives me some story, um, and then I have to escape a certain place, and people are chasing me, and I was like, okay. And so then it puts me into like the gameplay, and it's my character, and they are running from left to right, um, on their own. So at first I was pressing to the right, and then I realized that I didn't have to do that, and it was an auto runner, so it would be running on its own, and then I had to jump over obstacles, and eventually it got to where I was jumping over obstacles, hitting obstacles at the right time in front of me to blow them up, jumping up and hitting other obstacles, sliding under obstacles and things like that. So all that's pretty normal, I guess, in some ways. But the cool thing about the game is that when it is in those running sequences, it plays music, and the music is pretty good. I only heard 3 of the songs or whatever, but I was on every one of them. I was like, okay, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good song, but it's sort of like Res, in that if you make a little mistake, um, like you trip over a rail or something a little bit, but it's not enough to make you fail the run completely, then it will like kind of scratch the music out, like so it'll kind of show you, or kind of an auditory thing, so you know that you've kind of messed up. And then also when you do things right, it adds in certain beats and stuff like that, and helps to build the music up like more and more. So that aspect I liked about it. I thought it was cool, mostly because the music itself was actually like really good. So, or at least those ones were good. So it's really highly dependent on that, I think. But that's really kind of the best thing that I can say about it, because the rest of the game, it's just not. I mean, it's a demo, so we'll see how much more they do. But if it's close to release, and I think it's fairly close to release, it's just not really very polished. The story is kind of, I mean, it's there, but it's pretty much like, okay, yeah, I've kind of heard all this before. And there's a lot of stuff that, there's not a lot of reading, but everything to do with the story you pretty much have to read. Um, there's just not a whole, and like the art style isn't really all that great. It's like okay, but it's really nothing um, extra special. And so yeah, it's so I kind of came away from being like, well, I don't think I'm gonna buy it. So saved me some money on that front, um, and found that it does have some interesting things that would be cool if they were polished and maybe part of a different game, like part of a small part of a bigger game. Um, but otherwise, I was just sort of a little bit let down overall.
Okay. Yeah, because what little screenshots I've seen of it reminds me of the old rotoscope games from back in the the olden days, where like Prince of Persia, or my first thought was Flashback, because just the way you're running left and right, kind of just for some reason had that nostalgic vibe for me because you have to hit the jumps right. So all right, yeah, this game looks like it's been been cooking for a while. So
Oh
like
yeah.
doesn't yeah, they're it shows according to, at least according to a quick internet search, it was supposed to be like um initial release was June 13, 2022. So like that demo, and there's no, according to Steam, there's no current release window. Like doesn't it just says coming soon.
Okay.
So I'm kind of curious about that. Well, hopefully it comes out with a little bit more behind it, and yeah. All right, well, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks for at least telling us this much. I mean, it does have a kind of a weird background aesthetic, reminiscent of uh some of those, not is it Limbo or something like Limbo, where like the background tells a story on its own. Getting
Yeah,
that key visual.
I think the full game will probably. I mean, there definitely was some of that already, and I think the full game will probably do a lot more of it. But it was sort of just like, this is the thing. Whereas, I mean, I never played Limbo, but like Inside had things that you couldn't help but see, but they still felt like you were realizing it more than it was where more than it was just explaining it to you.
Yeah, I think this would be Inside would be a more apt description because of some of the background art. But yeah, all right. Well, uh, yeah, if it ever comes out, maybe you'll touch back and give us an update.
Yeah,
So,
we'll see.
all right. Well, what else you got?
So a long time ago, I was looking around on the internet, and I was looking around for hidden gems in manga, like because I mean, there's just thousands of manga titles that barely see the light of day before they end or whatever, and it's been going on since I mean, probably in mass since what, like the modern era would be like the 70s, probably 70s or 80s. So I figure there's a lot of crazy good manga out there that you just don't really ever get to hear about. So googling around and found a couple different ones. I'll probably talk about some of those others after I get to them. But this one in particular um, was pretty highly recommended, or pretty often recommended in a lot of the Reddit posts that I was looking at, and it was called Bitter Virgin. And I was like, what? It's like, okay, that sounds like a manga title. So, so people were like, yeah, it's good. It's not very long. So I was like, well, that sounds like two things that work for me. So I decided to finally pick it up and read through it. It was only about 40 chapters. I think it was like 40 chapters exactly, 40, 41, something like that. Um, so I decided to read it. It is a it is a seinen manga, I think is how you would categorize it, but it's sort of it would be like to me it's if you converted a shoujo manga into a seinen manga, where that's maybe I'm overcomplicating it, but it's like to the actual stuff in the story, in some ways is very girly, but it's like portrayed, I don't know, for like a guy somehow. Maybe I'm overcomplicating it. The thing with this manga is it's it is really good. I will say I understand why people like recommend it and stuff, because it is really good. But it is very heavy in a lot of the topics that it covers. Um, and that is what makes it sort of hard to recommend. It deals with very just very hard to talk about topics, that yeah. So it's hard to talk about. After I finished it, I was like, "Dag, I have to talk about this on the podcast, but I don't really know how I'm going to." So the long and short of it is that it is basically about a guy and a girl in high school, and the guy is sort of the protagonist, probably more than anybody else, and he finds out some things, some secrets about this girl. Um, and these are deep personal secrets and things that he is not supposed to know. And then it goes from there. Um, yeah, so that's sort of probably the thinnest explanation I can give to it. And then yeah, so it was good, and it was very it's definitely something that is definitely a manga that you can tell pretty quickly and easily that is a very personal story to the author. Not everything in it is something that happened to the author or whatever, but there are certain parts of it that definitely are, and they are very heavy. Unfortunately, I think after you read through some of that stuff, the author has like an afterword where they talk about their own experience with it and sort of um, give kind of it's in a nice way that kind of let you know like that was some bad stuff that happened to me, and I went through it, and it was very life changing, but then these other things happened, and now I'm okay. Um, so um, that was kind of reassuring, I would say. But yeah, it was. I don't know. I guess if somebody out there was curious about it based on the mealy mouthed way that I've talked about it, then I would suggest that you maybe go to read a little bit more about it if you can before diving in, because it's definitely not something for everyone. But it was at least well done, I could say.
Okay. Yeah, being only 4 volumes, I think that'll, make it a lot easier read for others. I have not actually come across this. So this is the first time I've seen it. Apparently,
This is something that I would say, Joe, that you probably could pass on. So I would just say that probably.
yeah. Well, a quick glance at the Wikipedia page, I'm like, oh yeah, I know everything I need to know about this.
Okay, okay,
Um,
good.
uh, yeah, it's chances are I've read worse, as in tougher topics, but at the same time, it's this is most definitely um instead of going to the manga right away, maybe you look over the Wikipedia page and see if that's up for you. That's going to be my recommendation. But it also kind of gives away some of the authors' trauma that kind of inspired this to a certain extent. So having that grounded understanding is not just like, hey, I'm just going to write a certain whatever crazy fanfic or something. You kind of have a better understanding where it's coming from.
Yeah,
All right.
indeed.
Yeah, it's interesting because you usually don't get to go and dive into manga that often.
Yeah,
You're more of the DC comic book guy, so
I'm making a more concerted effort to get into manga and get through a lot of, because there's a bunch of series where I'm like, dang, I really want to read that, and I should have read that by now because like one of the goats of manga or whatever. Um, and and finally I was like, okay, I I just have to start reading. Just make sure I read like a chapter every night or whatever. And then I also wanted to find some new weird stuff. Well, curiosity killed the cat, I guess, because that was like my first foray into the weird zone. So I guess you get what you
just
ask
mix
for.
into the weird stuff. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Uh, yes. All right. Well, I've also finally finished up a long running series manga. I've talked about it before, the anime, but My Dress Up Darling. So this one, I highly recommend it. It's really enjoyable. The there is a season 1 anime, and I believe the season 2 has been greenlit. Uh, Now that I say that, I'm probably going to be wrong, but I could have sworn it's supposed to be season 2 is supposed to be coming out later this year, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, rough story. What it's about is there's the main character, Gojo. He is his grandfather runs a Hina doll shop. So they make little, like kind of like porcelain doll looking, figures. And his father's been in that business, and he admires him, and he wants to be a doll maker as well. Being a guy, and in the 20th century, like he then obviously has he's afraid of the other people making fun of him for his hobby or his passion, especially since one of his childhood friends, who was a girl, chastised him for it, and so he's always been kind of quiet. And but he's happy in his own little world to that extent, where he then meets uh, a gyaru, essentially a girl who uh, dresses very flamboyantly, blonde hair, tan, fingernails all done up, um, and uh, she ends up being into cosplay. And so he discovers that she's interested in cosplay, but she doesn't know how to sew. He does because he makes the clothing for the little doll figures, and so she instantly tries to get him to help her with an outfit for a character. Uh, Funny enough, that character is from an H series, a visual novel,
Oh yeah.
and it completely breaks his brain because he doesn't understand any of that world. Um, and then he deep dives into uh, the source material in order to understand what the character and stuff like that. And it's kind of their forming of a bond and friendship throughout the series. It's very easygoing. Highly recommend it. They just finally finished it. Last chapter got put out like within the last couple days, and I think it's like roughly 115 chapters. They did have an excerpt at the end. There's going to be like a little side note, side story, like you know another epilogue kind of thing. They'll come out with eventually. I think they'll probably do that mostly just to fill out the last volume of the manga. Um, because currently the manga is at 14 volumes. So I'm not sure. They'll probably have a 15th one, is my guess. Not 100% sure. But yeah, that's it's been going on for like 7 years. So it's kind of nice to see a series come to an end. They could have easily milked it out for way farther. Uh, I joked about it because you kind of saw the signs earlier on, um, roughly around like chapter 100 or whatever. You kind of like they were coming up to a big story arc finish,
Mm-hmm.
and so everyone was speculating that it was going to come to an end. And my buddy saw that on Twitter and said, "Hey, you were into that anime? That manga just ended." I'm like, "Oh, cool. 108 chapters in." And then I messaged him like, "You piece of crap!" It's like it is still ongoing. It's like, uh, and he's like, "Oh, my bad. I didn't actually know anything about the series. I just knew that you were interested." I'm like, "All right, well, at least I had finished that major story arc." And I'm like, "Okay, that I left satisfied." But I'm like, you know, followed it continuing
Oh yeah,
monthly
because
since.
you read it thinking that
I
it
binged
was
the entire thing in
yeah.
like 2 weeks or something like that.
Dang.
That was pretty much my free time is just reading this thing, and it had some really good laugh out loud moments, and it's just the main character, Gojo, is pretty sweet. He's a pretty nice character. And then also, um, Marin, the main female lead, she's a very likable person, and just there's not really any bad people in the series. Um, yeah, it's just overall a solid one. Funny enough, also done by Square Enix, which is same publisher as uh, Bitter Virgin that you mentioned
Oh
before.
yeah, I did see their
So
names on that. Yeah.
so yeah, the um, I recommend watching the anime, and if the anime interests you, then pick up the manga. The manga is great, and but if you don't want to spoil the season two coming out, like I said, watch season one if it's up to, if it's to your liking. Uh, Later on this year, season two is supposed to release, and then if you really want to, then you can probably finish up the rest of it via manga because I doubt they'll be able to finish it all up in season two. I mean, they could if they wanted to, I guess it's possible. So, I mean, it would actually be nice if they finished up the story because they could really. I mean, it would be nice 2 seasons, the entire thing. The manga's already finished, so they all have the source material they need. That would actually be really nice if they did wrap it up. But I never expect my anime to come to a real end. I always seem to just drop off. So
Yeah, it does seem like they. I mean, they like to milk it for everything, and then there's all kinds of like non non mainline sub stories or whatever. Yeah, if it's very popular, it never really does. I guess.
yeah, well, I mean, I'd much rather have a nice story arc, something that finishes opposed to something that goes on forever or completely gets ruined, like a lot of the Shonen Jump stuff. It's like whenever a series comes to an end, like last year, was it Nagatoro came to an end, and that was awesome as
Mm,
well. Very happy about that. So yeah, these things, um, I totally recommend it. And I think so. This is my dress up darling. It's like Sono Bisku Doru something.
yeah,
It's I never understood
it's
the
like that.
like
I don't even know what bisque would mean, and I don't know where they're
um
getting that
it.
word.
I think it's supposed to be the style or something like the like. Anyways, besides the point, I like I said, look up for my dress up darling. Easy read. In fact, because of my going through those all those chapters beforehand and like talking about it, I got my wife to read it, so she ended up binging like the entire series as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
easy recommendation, hands down.
So it ended
Very
up
funny.
at what? How many? 100 and what?
I think it was 115 chapters.
115. Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty
it was one of your
digestible.
first anime getting into it when we started this podcast, and I remember you actively cringing because it was funny, but it was also awkward for you.
Episode
It
2
was
is pretty. I can't believe you showed that to the people. I can't remember if you talked about it on this podcast, but I can't believe you showed that episode to the people that you showed that episode to. That's not something that I would want to do willingly. It's yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but it's really good, and it doesn't like you think it's kind of going to go one way, and then it ends up not really going that way. It ends up being a bit more highbrow rather than lowbrow, and it's really well done. So yeah, that's kind of one of those that I've looked at the manga a little bit for, and I was kind of like, man, the anime is so has so much money behind it and all that stuff that it looks so nice that it sort of makes the manga look sort of average by comparison. But that was just at the beginning, so I'm sure the artists got better and stuff. So but 115 chapters is not bad. That's pretty easy to finish fairly quickly. I mean, probably not in a day or whatever, but compared to like 3, 4, 500 chapters that some of these guys go for, it's pretty easy to get through.
all right. Well, if you made it this far, we appreciate it. This has been ADP, episode 119. Nick, what are some words of wisdom you got for the people out there?
Um, you know, when you're running into a burning building, you think that you'd want to be have less clothes on, because it'd be so hot, so you don't want to get too hot. But really, that's not the biggest concern. It's the fire. That's the biggest concern, and the more layers that you can take off if you catch on fire, the better that it is.
All right. This coming from you with Nick with the burns to prove it. All right.
Yep.
Until next time, take it easy.
Bye.